Our next panel is Batterer's Intervention Strategies. We have 4 panelists who are going to talk about their projects, their initiatives, challenges, and successes. They've got a real conversation going. And I'm going to really introduce first is Bridget Vincent O'Neill. She's the Executive Director of First Choice Social Services, Garland, Texas. And she's going to kind of guide this group and in the conversation about Batterer's intervention.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am Queen Bee, and you are here for a domestic violence TV show. You didn't know that, did you? Woo! You are our audience today. And I have some esteemed guests here that's going to talk to you about something that normally people don't even talk about, and that's working with the batterers. We heard a lot about the victims and what we can do with victim services. But this afternoon, we're going to talk to y'all about what are we doing with the perpetrators, okay? All right. Thank y'all again for coming to my show. Queen Bee in the house. Woo! So my first guest is Dr. Patricia Davenport. She's the founder and executive director of Our House, located in Greenville, Mississippi. Our House programs consist of Men Against Spousal Harm, MASH, Letting Each Affliction Heal, LEAH, and New Beginnings, a domestic violence shelter rape crisis program, STD, HIV and AIDS prevention awareness program. Give her a round of applause. And she also brought with her Becky. And this is Becky. Okay. Yay. Yes, she is. Next, we have Jennifer King, and she's specially known as Dr. King, and Regional Director of Texas Department of Criminal Justice, Community Justice Assistance Division. Woo! Ms. King has 31 years of experience in the field of probation, with 24 of those years working with batterers intervention and prevention programs. Dr. King and all her beautiful purple.
Thank you.
Yes. And last but definitely not least, we have our very own Pastor Dr. J.R. Thicklin. Woo! President of Destiny by Choice, Inc., a healing and empowerment program for victims of domestic violence. Let's give our round of applause for our panelists. And as she said before, and I'm Bridget Vincent O'Neill, I am your host. And also, I also work with the batterers as well. And you'll hear some of me a little bit later as we go along. So, first of all, I'm going to give each one of them a chance to, if you would like, to introduce yourself in a different way. If I didn't do what I did well. Awesome, awesome audience. Okay, we're going to jump right into it because we're trying to stay focused on the time. Yes. Okay. Our first question. What makes your programs? No, actually, I need to do this a little different. I am going to ask you a different question. What specifically is your role at your particular agencies? How about that?
Okay, my role at my agency, I work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. You'll hear me refer to the great state of Texas all afternoon. And my particular role, I'm a regional director with TDCJ. And what that basically means, we have 254 Texas Department of Criminal Justice. That's the prison system, parole, and probation. We're all under one umbrella. We have 40,000 employees, so we're a huge agency. We're one of the largest agencies in the state. And the particular division I work for is the Community Justice Assistance Division, and we're the regulatory agency over probation. We have 254 counties in Texas. I'm responsible for about a third of them in terms of the operations of the probation department, and I'm also in charge of the Batterers Intervention and Prevention programs statewide. We actually have funding for batterers programs. I'll refer to them as BIP. We have $3.5 million that we give out to programs. Now, in the great state of Texas, that's not a whole lot of money in the big scheme of things because the state is so large. So we only fund 24 programs statewide. We also contract with the Texas Council on Family Violence, which is our state coalition, and we work together with them on this project. In addition to the 24 programs we fund, any program in the state of Texas that wants to provide services to batterers has to be accredited. So one of the things you guys want to do is be sure that you work with your policymakers that they're setting legislation that requires your programming to be regulated. Bridget actually works in one of the programs in the state that's accredited, and she'll have an opportunity to talk about that. But we set the minimum standards for the programs, so all programs have to operate the same. Are there any audience members here from probation? None from probation? Parole? Oh, in Tacoma. Okay, so that's my role in the agency. So I also have a staff that goes out and actually audits the programming. They sit in on groups, and if the programs aren't operating in accordance with the guidelines, then they're not accredited, and they cannot serve batterers in the state.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Dr. Davenport.
Yes, I have a community program, and we're a sexual assault, domestic violence program, and we're in Mississippi. And of all the groups here, and everybody up here, and everybody else that came, we're only the rural counties up here. And I actually serve 9 counties out of 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. In addition to having that, since our focus is on batterers program, we created a batterers program about 20 years ago called Men Against Spousal Harm. But the beauty of our program was, even though it was designed after the Duluth model, which I'm not sure everybody is familiar with that particular model, but that particular model was based on and created in a particular county that has less than 2% Afro-American. Now, in my particular 9 counties, I have over 77% Afro-American. So though I like the material and the quality of it, it had to be adapted. So within our community, and it can be adapted, we had to address the issues of Afro-American history, as well as the fact we opened up an option at the very end of the program for spirituality, so that they can have that. Our program is 26 to 52 weeks, and it's a mandated program by the courts. If you volunteer to come in and you're abusive, we don't even charge you. We just so glad you want to admit fault. Just glad. Because that's half our battle. We used to do 4 to 6 weeks because that's what the judge was mandating to us. And we had to go back and tell the judge, I'm sorry. It takes that long to get them to admit that they were wrong for throwing that plate of spaghetti in their face, okay? So 4 to 6 weeks, that's a slap on the hand. So many of the judges that we have, if they cannot accept a 26 or 52-week program, they end up sending them to a 4-week program at mental health or to their pastor, which saddens me because mental health does not identify in our particular area as domestic violence dealing with power and control. They believe it deals with anger management. That's false. That will never work, that will never heal. And one of our programs, because it's a batterers program that we have in our community, our agency firmly believe in the holistic approach, which means the reason why we started working with batterers, it was because I started seeing second generations of victims. And what I mean by second generation is I was in the shelter one day, and while I was in the shelter doing an interview with one woman, it hit me that when she started describing her batterer, that there was another woman in my shelter too who also had the same batterer. I'm like, okay, somewhere along here. And then we wanted to also break that generational cycle. Do we believe that men who batter can change? Domestic violence battering is a behavior modification. If they want to change, they can change. We cannot change them. Okay. So that tells you a little bit about my program. A little bit about what I do. When I didn't say that, I'm the executive director, okay? So I do everything. I clean toilets, I counsel, and I do everything else, okay? I forgot that part.
Dr. Thicklin.
Pastor J.R. Thicklin, the CEO and Executive Director of Destiny by Choice Family and Community Services. I'm located down in a place called West Palm Beach, Florida. And we've been in the work of domestic violence for over 23 years, but 16 years ago, I started my faith-based program mainly because the fact that I understood there was a lot of missing gaps inside of mainstream services, as in not only the approach, but as they related to certain segments of our population. And interesting, although I reside in West Palm Beach, there was an area where I was pastoring at the time, where it was the rural part of Palm Beach County, the part that you don't see in the advertisement or the tourist bureau. You don't see the beaches and things. Actually, what that area is cornfields and sugarcane factories, and just happen to be the best place to get NFL football players. They have the greatest number of NFL players come from that area than any place in the country. Anquan Bolden, we can go on and on and on and on and on, all come from that area. But that's what they was known for. But you must understand, they was also known for a high rate of battering. They didn't have a lot of social things to do there, and those levels were there. So inside, and running a real full program in that rural area, very much like Dr. Davenport said, the judges out there did not make it mandatory for those gentlemen to attend a 26-week program. When I came out there, they was doing the exact same thing. Let them go 4 weeks, and that was it. But we was able to convince the judge to change the modality, and that's what we have done over the period of years. And now we've gone on from just that part of doing domestic violence, batterers intervention, to doing some things in the prison. We'll talk more later. Thank you.
I also work with First Shore Social Services. I'm the executive director, but I also do the BIP program. And I've been working with the BIP for 18 years. And in the program, I've been accredited, and I've accredited other agencies along the way as I was coming through the ranks of working with the other agencies. But one of the things that I wanted to really point out, and we're going into what makes your programs unique, your different programs that you work for and work with, is that I have the pleasure of working with parole. Also, I work with a predominantly all African American group that's housed in South Dallas, if anybody know the southern sector of Dallas. And in that particular program, those guys, it's about 18 guys in that group. And I do have a male facilitator that also works with me. And one of the things that they are so guarded when they're talking about their stories, and in trying, even though they will say what they did to their victim, but it's almost like they will say it in a way, yes, I did those things, and taking responsibility for it, but not necessarily the accountability for it. And so in working with them and having a younger male facilitator with me, I have been able to see how the dynamics of the group unfold, even though I'm there, but he's there. And when they start to victim blame is when he steps in and he talks about how can we put that blame on our victims on when they wasn't the cause of our violence. We did this. They had nothing to do with that. And so they listen. They're able to accept that from him. Also, I have another group that's predominantly all white, and it's in a very influential neighborhood. And I don't have a facilitator with me with them. And so it's very different with me speaking with these guys. They really are into learning how to change their behavior. They want to know what can they do. They always felt like because they were entitled to do this, they can do this. It's male privilege for them. I make the money. I put her in a $500,000 home. So now that's a lot of money in Texas. That's a large home in Texas. and she's able to, I can afford not for her to work. Why is she complaining? Why is that an issue? Because I tell her, I give her an allowance. And so having to talk with them about that is not okay. And this is why it's not okay. So the educational piece is really relevant for them, because they don't necessarily have to worry about, are they going to put food on their table? Or are they going to jail the next day for something? They don't even have to worry about that. Then I have another group where it's a mixed group, and this one is younger guys and more guys from other states that are in this group. And it's funny how when they talk about one of the little guys, he's about, well, he's a man, he's 24 years old, and he called me on the phone and he was panicking because he has a baby. And his baby is about 6 months. And he's like, Miss Vincent O'Neill, what am I do? I want to come to class, but I don't have a babysitter. If I worked for someone else, I would have had to say, I'm sorry, you can't bring him. But since I work for myself, I said, bring him on. I want you to come because exactly, because there's times when, just like the women, they need help. They need babysitters. They don't have that. And we make allowances for the victims. We have child care for the victims. And oftentimes we don't have child care for the batterers who wants to be in this program because he wants to change his behavior. So I had him to bring his son, and talking with the guys, I'm here. I'm going to help you to be the best person you feel like you want to be in changing your behavior. And if that means that you have to, if I have to get a volunteer for childcare, I'll do that for you. And they were just like in awe. So just being able to recognize there are subcultures in your cultures when working with batterers and in domestic violence. Okay.
The question was, what makes your program unique? Well, I don't have a program per se, but I work at the state level, at a policy level. And I think what makes our programming different, we have guidelines that programs have to follow. We actually modeled after Florida in terms of accreditation. And now I'm understanding JR says they don't do it anymore. So I'm not real sure what the hell they're doing down there in Florida. But in Texas, we standardize programming. And one of the things that we found, Bridget talked a little bit about working in a affluential neighborhood with the batterers. She talked about male privilege. When you're working with African American males, they don't have any male privilege. So there's a whole different dynamic you're dealing with. So that's why I think it's very, very important for us to talk about these culturally relevant issues as it pertains to dealing with this population, or any population for that matter. In Houston, Texas, one of our larger counties, we have a large Vietnamese population. So they're having to deal with that in terms of programming. So when we wrote our guidelines, we tried to have bare minimum and keep them as general as possible so programs could have autonomy to make decisions within their program, like Bridget does, to best suit their population. So we, in our curriculum, in our guidelines, we don't say what curriculum you have to use. Rather, we give about 17 things that your curriculum has to cover, the best way that it can cover it. Most programs use Duluth or modified Duluth. The first time I heard about the Duluth curriculum, I was like, who in the hell lives in Duluth, Minnesota? Is there anybody there that looks like me? And no, there is not. Nobody there that looks like me. So that being said, a lot of the foundational things dealing with the Duluth curriculum are very, very important to cover in the programming, but you have to keep those culturally specific things in mind dealing with the population you're dealing with. That being said, I think we're a little unique in Texas. There may be other states that also have accreditation, but I don't know of many because I have a lot of states calling me for technical assistance so that they can do that. And the research is all over the place about batterers programs. If you take a look at any research, and you have people on both sides of the fence. People that say anger management is the way to go, and that's not. Batterers can manage their anger very, very well. They're not lashing out at their boss. It's about power and control. I have some copies of the power and control wheel here. This is from the Texas Council on Family Violence. I keep referring to Texas. I'm not even from Texas. I've just lived there a long time. But we're mandated to work with our coalition, and they provide a lot of resources. We do a lot of training in probation and parole. We're working with CPS. We have volunteers. Like I said, we do have state funding. I think that makes us a little unique because not a lot of states have funding for batterers programs. So if anyone has any specific questions about programming, I'll be around, and I'm going to pass the mic because I know we're a little rushed.
Great. Just so you all know, I forgot to mention that Becky comes to the Batterers group, and there's a time limit. You're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock. If you come at 8:05, she starts barking, and she does not stop barking. And when they come in the door, they're like, I said, well, Becky said you can't come in. You're barking now, okay? So she is actually a therapeutic dog. And so she also sits in on the batterers group, which is kind of unique because one moment they could be cussing. And next moment I see him rubbing Becky. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Becky, because I was about to put somebody out. One of the other unique things in my program is that we also have a female batterers group. And we were at one time putting them together, but we realized they have separate issues. And so we had to deal with that on a separate base. Another thing was that I'm one of the co-facilitators as well with Joe McCall, is that we'll do the program and the curriculum, but sometime in the midst of it, I'll get the feel that they're really opening up and really talking, and I'll just walk out the door. I'll be like, okay, the last hour, because ours is 3 hours long, it's going to just be with you all. Just you all. And we do that on a regular basis. We also have, in the last, because I've been working in the field 30 years, in the last 20 years, we started a Trainers of Trainers, and we sent several of our faith-based leaders to Duluth to get training. So many of the gentlemen there, they don't know that the person who's actually conducting the classes or sessions are actually pastors or ministers. And that's the way of engaging them and opening up the door for discussions. Sometime a little humor, because my bishop was sitting in the lobby waiting to teach a class, and one of the guys came in and they went upstairs, and when they got there, they waited and they wasn't saying anything. And he sat in the middle of the group because we had another instructor that was there at the time. And next thing you know, he got up to speak and everybody went, man, we thought you were here for the class. And I was like, okay. So they don't understand that pastors and deacons can also be batterers. And that's something that we have to also share with them. Firemen, police officers have to leave the gun at the door. And I think really that's the key for since we have such a little brief time here on the differences within our program is because I'm community-based, because our Batterer program is not funded by federal or state programs, but funded through the heart of my agency, we can do a lot more with our batterers than other people can because I love guidelines and I follow them as much as I can. But sometimes you just have to break out and have a serious conversation with these brothers. And that's one of the other unique things about our agency.
Well, when we start talking about unique, what's unique to one may not be unique to another, but right. One thing is the approach. In the time that we did Batterers Intervention was to make sure that, first of all, there's a national saying that goes start by believing the victim. Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you're going to do effective batterer intervention, you got to start by believing that these batterers can change. Right. If you don't believe they can change, you're in the wrong business. There's really a disconnect in many systems where basically they will order a batterer to batterers intervention as a condition of their punishment. Well, if you go and take this without being offended, then we'll no approach your case. It'll be thrown out. It's not on your record. Well, what is the real incentive? The real incentive is not to go to jail or get a charge there. There's no real incentive to say that I need to own my stuff. I need to be transformed. I need help and have ownership. So one of the things that we do is that we spend a lot of time, once again, training the Duluth model and all those things. But what I understand is that you have to deal with the core of a person. You got to deal with the core of who they are. And I don't want to sound like a batterer apologist because that's not who I am. But in assessment, you need to find out a lot about who these individuals are. And what you'll find out is that a lot of these individuals are nothing but second and third generation victims themselves. They grew up like this, and guess what? When they was under 12, they was in somebody's shelter. I don't know how they graduated from being victims as under 12 to being just full-out perpetrators now that they're older. You have to consider that, because they're acting out what they know. So one of the things that we think is a great approach that we do that is uniquely, we do spend a lot of time in talking about their background, not to justify their behavior, but to understand what is it that informs them. Because we act the way that we act. We are talking about behavior, right? We act the way that we act because we think the way that we think. If you've been programmed, you've been informed, what informs behavior? My lifestyle, my environment, my background. This is what I've known. And regardless of what social economic class they're in, this has been unique inside of that. So although we adhere to what Duluth says to a certain degree, we make no bones about it that if we have to spend a little bit more time in that collective group in a certain area, that's where we're going to spend the time, because that's where we're getting disclosure. As I think Dr. Davenport said, it takes you a while just to get them to admit that I've done this, to own this. And it's so funny because we have open-ended groups. So, you may have a guy who's coming in on week 1 and 2, but you got guys that is on week 14 and 15. So when the new guy comes to him, I shouldn't even be here anyway. All the older guys say, yeah, right. We said the same thing. And so that becomes an internal support system. The other thing that makes it unique about what we talk about is the fact of this. I deal a lot with men, especially men that are fathers or men that are brothers, and most of them are either father or brother or son. So it's one of the identity is that we like dealing with the fact of what we call the relationship period. What makes you who you are? What has informed that? So, yeah, we deal with masculinity and what defines masculinity and what defines power. And one of the things that we find out in dealing with men that batter is oftentimes when you look at the thing that informed them, a lot of these men are broken men. They're angry men. Not that anger is their problem, but they're angry, they're broken. And the one thing they've been able to control successfully is their relationship with their women, although they're controlling it through power and control. So we spend a lot of time getting them to identify their issue because they can't accept it. I can tell you, all right, okay, I accept responsibility. I can make my mouth say anything. But until they can own and be able to look at it, and we try to get them in a way, I'd say, the anthropology of understanding how did you come to be this way. And so that's very important. And other than that, I will say this to you is that we think what is incredibly unique with our men is the fact that we offer them the opportunity, even after they're done with it, to become part of that movement. Man up, stand up against domestic violence.
Yeah. I just wanted to add some to what he was saying about that. We have a sign in our group room that says Men Empowering Men. The sign is not for the batterers. The sign is for the instructors because they tend to treat them when they first get in there as felony. Well, if you're going to treat them as a felony, then they don't see you seeing them as a human. So we have to regroup our mindset. So just following up with what he was saying, I just wanted to add that. Is that okay, Oprah?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
okay. Exactly. That's right. And I want to just piggyback a little bit off of what JR said, as Pastor JR said as well, is that within our group, one, and this is leading into our other, tell a story about a client. I do have a client that works with me, and he completed the program. He was on a federal parole. He got in trouble, and then he got out. He was 20 years old, I believe, and going to college, and got in trouble with another young man. Went through federal parole. So he got with this young lady, and she had a child. He had a child with her. And he has since come back to the program to help me. And so one of the things that he talked about to our guys, because he noticed that they were kind of laughing during some of the time that we were doing our group, and they were kind of taking it lightly. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to tell y'all something. And he really told them about the type of person that he was and before he came into the program. And he also told them, I was a guy that I've done everything you can imagine to a woman. He said, I cheated on her. I had an outside baby. He said, I beat her. Then I have the nerve to not, he said, I proposed to, but I haven't even married her. And he said, I've done all those things. And he said, now I just realized that that's not what you call being a man. Because he said, I always thought that I was a man. He said, that's not being a man. Now he's only 28. And he said, that's not being a man. And he said, I'm here. He said, not because I have to be, but because I want to be. And that right there, those guys, and like the little guy I was telling you that came in with his baby, he looked at him and he was like, oh, because he also was one of the ones that would kind of laugh a little bit and tell his story and funny, like, but he stopped him right there. So I think, again, having someone that have gone through the program also helps you to validate how the program can work for individuals if they work the program. Story. What stories do you have?
I don't work with offenders or batterers. I'm not in the trenches like all of you and the panel up here, but instead I work for the state of Texas. And one of the things I want to say before they speak, because this will kind of lead into what they talk about, is we've got to have a coordinated community response. JR and I do a workshop called Two Wings. A bird can't fly without two wings. And we have a lot of weight put on the victim side, and I'm not trying to minimize it at all. When you talk about batterers programs, we talk about minimizing, denying, and blaming, and I am not doing that by any means when it comes to victims. But we spend a lot of time, resources, and a hell of a lot of money on victims. But until we start spending some of those same resources on perpetrators, the victims may get out, but the batterers are going to move on to another victim. So we need that bird's wings to be just as strong on both sides. And that being said, and a coordinated community response, when I work with probation, I have found over the years, and I've been in probation for 31 years, our, no, when I was born. I started when I was born. I have found that probation departments that apply for grants for with the state have been coming in asking for more money for domestic violence caseloads. We've got to pair that batterers program with domestic violence caseloads. We got to get our prosecutors, our judges, and everyone educated on that level. And a lot what I've found is people are saying batterers programs don't work. They don't, not alone. They don't work alone. So until we don't talk about substance abuse programs only being the only sanction for offenders, they're drug tested. There's all these other things that go along with it, along with a caseload. One of the things we did in Texas, the great state of Texas, is we helped the Army base in Killeen, Fort Hood, one of the largest Army bases in the country, start a batterers program that is accredited through the state. They actually are working with the Department of Defense in order to get batterers programs on other bases. So I was very, very proud and very, very honored when they contacted us to help them get their program started. So that being said, like I said, I kind of work what some people refer to as an ivory tower. I'm not in the trenches with everybody else, but I understand what it's like. I've sat in groups for over 24 years. I've been there. I've heard a lot of stories, but I can't speak to them firsthand. But we have got to have a coordinated community response, and we can't just get on the victim side and think that we're going to fix this. Because the victims may want to stay, like someone talked about, they want their fathers there. The victims may want to leave. It doesn't matter. For now, we've got to do something with the batterer because they will go on to victimize other victims. So until we can work on both sides. Oh, also, I'm sorry, I saw your question here. One of the things that our programs have to do is, in order to be accredited, you have got to have, at a minimum, 2 contacts with the victim when the batterer enters the program and when they exit the program. They are mandated by the guidelines. We go in and we check files to send that information to them. They have got to have access to resources. And in order to be accredited, a batterers program has to have a cooperative working agreement with the shelter. They have got to work together. They have got to work together. Yes. No, we will execute you. Please don't talk about us. Just let me talk about that.
cardinal job. Come on, because you're coming up against it now. And you're talking about not just battery of the mother or the baby mama deal here, talking about other relationships, which a lot of times the attitude of these very same men get them shocked by the police. Come on now, this is the black community. You don't change much from Oakland to Detroit to New York to Brooklyn, where I'm from. I'm talking the real deal here. So the program's so effective. Why isn't that a template or a model for the country?
I think it is. For the most part, most programs, as you heard them talk about their programs being several weeks. If we could have programs mandated for 52 weeks, we would. But a lot of our cases are misdemeanor cases that may be 6 months to 1 year. When they rise to the felony level, then they will put them in. We have some programs in Texas that actually have high risk offender groups. So we do, they, while they're on probation for either a misdemeanor 6 months to 24 months, there is still some programming that happens. We also work with parole, we work with CPS, and those entities have different requirements. Sometimes the CPS cases in Texas, they have to dispose of the case before programming is up. So we figure that some programming is better than no programming. We also in Texas have a prevention piece as part of the funding that we have, the 3.5 million that goes to our state coalition, and they have a whole unit that works strictly on prevention. We've got to dig deeper. We've got to start earlier. I think by the time we get them on the back end, when they're in a group and they've victimized for years and years and years, because it only takes a couple of times to be beat up, and then you're going to know what to do when you get that look or whatever. So she's trying to take this mic from me. She don't want to hear about Texas no more.
But due to the interest of time, I'm going to have y'all to answer our final question. What takeaways would you like this audience to have from what you've done? So I'm going to skip you.
If I had a takeaway for you all each to have, is that the only way we're going to break this generational cycle is for us to consider every particular person in the family. You cannot break this cycle by just dealing with the victim. You can't break it definitely by going with the batterers. You also have to have children programs. You have to have preventive programs. You have to have outreach programs for the extended family to understand what's happening here, why is this happening, what I need to prevent. So when you're looking as a whole, the only way, if you want to end domestic violence, then you need to incorporate the entire family in the program of recovery and healing. Everyone needs to be involved.
I so totally agree with what has been said, and I'm going to echo it by saying this: if there's anything to take away here, is that once again, we have been so oriented that even in our language, we still put the responsibility on the victim. She needs to do this. We just got through talking about rape and sexual assault. Well, we need to teach our girls. Well, as a father of 4 sons and 1 daughter, my daughter being the second oldest, my conversation with my sons is just as much about responsibility as it is with my daughter. It's important that they know how to treat women. It's important that they know how to protect themselves. It's important that they know what violation is. It's important that they know that no means no. It's important. And so we have to understand that, we have to move from what was to what must be. This thing started off being a violence against women movement, and rightfully so. I said 23 years ago, we're not going to effectively move this until we engage men and boys. Well, welcome. Now it took us 20 years to realize we need to engage men and boys, because we have to get over us versus them, and understand that if we don't help the batterer, he might not be with this victim, but he'll be with another victim somewhere along the line. So all we're doing is playing musical chairs, passing along the line. There must be a reorientation of how we think. We have to work with men. Man up, stand up against domestic violence. Frederick Douglass said something that I believe in and I live, and I wrote a program based upon this one quote. It's easier to raise strong children than it is to repair broken men. I deal with both ends of it. On 2 days of the week, I'm dealing with young boys that I'm trying to raise so they don't become the broken men that I see on Tuesday and Wednesday in the prison. And so we have to. And what we must understand, that goes beyond who's politically correct. It is survival of our families that is at stake here. And regardless of what you consider a family unit to be, if we don't engage and understand that domestic violence is really a learned behavior, folks, parent university is happening all over our country. And folks are graduating in magna cum laude because we're not changing the curriculum. And we've got to do better as far as that goes. So that comes from the church house to the outhouse, and we got to do more at the White House. Thank you.
I just have one quick takeaway, and then Queen B is going to take questions. But I'm just happy to be here in Oakland, the home of the Black Panthers.
Okay, are there any questions? I think our time is just about up.
Probably over 20 years. And I work in the prison system for the last 10 years. One thing about the work that we're all trying to do here, this work takes courage. Courage to change policies that don't work. Courage to sit in a room with these sex offenders, because it's not easy. I know plenty of doctors that will not treat sex offenders. I know plenty of doctors that will not work with domestic violence perpetrators. And we even have a law here in California that says a couple can't even be in therapy together if one was convicted of domestic violence until they've completed 52 weeks. Because there are a lot of doctors, psychologists, social workers that won't work with couples, period, because it ain't easy. But if you're authentic, if you don't know something and they ask you something, you say, I don't know, but let me see if I can find out. Because once they pick up that you're a phony, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're lying, you can't help them. So it takes courage to be honest with somebody. I got a lot of patients that if I tell them the truth, I know it's going to hurt them, but I also know it's going to help them. I know it's going to help heal them. And I also know that recovery is lifelong. You don't ever stop recovering. It takes forever to get yourself right and then to maintain it, because you're either getting better in life or you're getting worse. There's no neutral. You're not going to arrive and then you're going to be there. Everything takes work and everything takes some courage. So we have to be authentic. We got to have the courage. Life is a risk, too. There's a whole lot of times, I've been fired from jobs because I told the truth. You know? Now, I try to say it now. I'm a little older. I still tell the truth, but I say it with compassion. You know, we got to be smart. We got to be compassionate. But we got to be truthful. And we got to keep it real. And we got to be courageous to do this work. At the prisons, I sit and talk to Satan. Yes, I do. Anybody who works in prison knows that. But now, why can I sit and talk with Satan? Because I got God as my back. That's why. I can't be intimidated by Satan. And we can't be intimidated by any of these men that are doing all this abuse. And most of these prisoners have been abused themselves. So let's offer people treatment, because we know punishment does not work. It's a temporary suppressor of the behavior. But if you really want to help somebody, figure out what's wrong with them and help fix them. Have the courage.
Okay. My takeaway would be this is a lifestyle change for them, and they can come back to our group at any time for free as long as they haven't reoffended. And if they did, they can still come back, but they have to pay for it. So my program is a fee for service, so they do have to pay. When they come to the program, they are hitting her. Maybe by the time they leave the program, they're no longer hitting, but doesn't mean that they're not still using some form of control, but they have reduced physical violence.
And a lot of times when the guys come to the group and they learn about the different tactics that are on the power and control wheel, things they saw as kids, they don't even realize what is going on. So it's all about education. We don't call it treatment. We call it psychoeducation. When we started accreditation in Texas, we had to deal with psychologists and all other professions that wanted to use a medical model, and that's just not what this is. if you think about changing behavior, it's a process. And in Texas, at a minimum, they have to go 18 weeks, 36 hours. That's not very long. For the ones that do 52 weeks, that's much better. The longer, the better. But a lot of times, our hands are tied because most of them are misdemeanor cases that they got caught this time or the police was called this time. If we could have a longer time to spend with offenders, we could change behavior. Because I've never been on a diet and been successful the first time just doing it for 18 weeks. I've always relapsed, as you can see. They have to be able to identify those issues and send them to the proper people because we don't want to start dealing with things that we're not equipped to deal with. So I think if we can identify them, if we can work in the schools, you have all kinds of professionals in the schools that can help identify that. But one of the things we cannot have facilitators doing is work. If someone comes to group drunk, they're supposed to make them leave group, and then they need to contact the probation department. They don't need to be trying to deal with any substance abuse issues. So that being said, that's back to a coordinated community response when those issues can be identified by whoever the treatment provider is or the care provider, then they need to be sent to the proper person. And if we all work together, right.
Let's give another round of applause.
Thank you.